lamp slideshow, you will see this, and then this is the bit I want to talk to you more about. So development instructions. You click on that, and then this will come up. Cool. What is the key word in this internal? Develop a product design through graphics practice. So the product design is our lamp, and graphics practice is like product design knowledge and drawing techniques. So this is the rubric for excellence. I'm going to talk about it in a bit more detail, and we can aim for excellence, and if you hit it, amazing, and if you don't, hopefully you'll fall into merit and achieve naturally. So that first paragraph on the left explores, reviews, and refines well-considered design ideas through graphics practice that integrate product design knowledge progressing towards an outcome. So that sounds like a lot of gobbledygook, but when we break it down, it's not too bad. So we'll look at the blue bit, explores, reviews, and refines. So exploring, that's like going in lots of different directions. So in ideation, you explored. You went in lots of different directions for your lamp. In your development, you can explore too. So maybe you go, oh, my lamp's going to tip over. I need to explore a couple of different ways to make it not tip over. And maybe that's where you look into making a bigger base or a lighter, like a more lightweight shade. Or maybe you add a concrete bit into the base so it doesn't tip over. That's exploring. You're coming up with lots of ideas to stop it tipping over. Reviewing. So that's talking about good and bad bits. You know, when someone leaves a review, they're talking about the good and bad bits of a movie or good and bad bits of a restaurant. So you're reviewing, you're talking about the good and bad bits of your design. And that happens all the way through. Like at ideation, it happens in concepts, and it happens during development too. So you can say, yes, this bit of the idea is good because, this bit of the idea is bad because. And that leads me on to refining. So to refine something is to make improvements. It's all very well and good reviewing something and be like, yeah, this is good, this is bad. But if you don't act on the bad bits to make them better, it's not good design practice. So you make improvements based on the bad bits. So if you identified that your lamp's probably going to tip over because the shade's too heavy or the base is too small, that's something you can refine and improve. And you can go, how could I do that? Right, the integrate product design knowledge. That takes us into the technical details I'm constantly telling you about. So material information. Let's say in your concept you said, yep, it's going to be made of stainless steel. If you want to keep it made of stainless steel during your development, great, but you can talk more about it in detail. So you can say, I'm choosing stainless steel because it's strong, lightweight, easy to shape, it's reflective, which goes with my futurism era, or something like that. You're going into more detail. Joining methods. What's the best way to join all the parts of your lamp together? Screws, glue, welding. What are the pros and cons of them? What one are you choosing and why? Construction. How is it put together? Sustainability. How can it be recycled at the end of its time, or is it made of good materials? Wiring. Where do the wires go? Light bulbs. What sort of bulb have you got? Have you got halogen or LED? A bright white light or sort of a warm orangey gold light? You could make 3D models of your lamp, like make one out of paper or Play-Doh or something. You could do market research, so you could talk to people, see who might want to use your lamp. You could think about the size. What size is good and why? Would it fit on a bedside table? How tall is it? Can someone actually read under it? Do they fit under it? Okay, the next bit, making design judgments on the relevant aesthetic and functional features of the design in response to the brief that inform the progression of those design ideas. So to look at that as a whole thing is a lot, but we'll break it down again. So making design judgments on the relevant aesthetic and functional features. So aesthetic is how it looks, functional is how it works. So you're pretty much talking about the good and bad bits of how it looks and how it works. Does it look good? Does it look bad? Does it work? Does it work well? That sort of links into the reviewing and refining that we talked about before. It then says, in response to the brief that inform the progression of those ideas. So in response to the brief, that's where you can talk about whether your lamp does or doesn't meet your brief. So if you said it's going to be made for a bedside table, but you've made it 2 meters tall, that's where you can make a design judgment being like, yeah, it's a bit too tall. My brief said it needs to fit on a bedside table. Yeah, so you're reviewing the function of it in terms of the brief. You're saying, yeah, it won't fit on the bedside table if it's 2 meters tall. That leads me into the next bit, inform progression. So you've made that judgment saying, yeah, it's not going to fit. Progression. You need to progress with that idea. If it's not going to fit, what can you change to make it better and make it fit on the bedside table? Cool. And this last bit, support design judgments with qualitative and or quantitative data gathered through research. So this is when you make changes to your design and your development. If you're saying, yeah, I want to change the light to be warmer, do some research. What sort of light bulbs are warm? How many lumens do they need? What type of light bulb? Is it like one of the coily ones? Or is it one with just a wire in the middle of a glass bulb? Or what sort of thing? Research some some light bulbs. Stick them on. Talk about pros and cons. Talk about which one you're choosing. Research can include making a model. So you're supporting your size change with the paper model you made that you then put on your bedside table and said, yeah, it's too big. Research can include paper models. Research doesn't have to just mean online searches. Yeah? Research could also include asking a potential user what they think. So hope that's making sense. Okay, let's boil down refinement into 4 points. Firstly, you need to choose one of your 3 concepts to develop. Yeah, and you do that development over 3 or more pages. There is no page limit, so you can go absolutely nuts if you want, or you can just do 3. Cool, so you can choose a design and develop it over 3 pages. You are not doing one development for each lamp. You're choosing one lamp and developing it over and over and over. Cool, so firstly, the point of development is to make improvements to the design based on positives and negatives you have identified. You have to show progress from one idea to the next. So that's all the stuff I just talked about here, about progressing after you've made design judgments. Yeah, so make improvements to your lamp based on positives and negatives about the function and aesthetics, how it looks and how it works, and based on how well it meets your brief and how it looks like, and whether it looks like it's from your era. Yeah, if you don't want to change stuff, you don't have to change everything about your lamp. If you just want to change a couple of things, what you can do to fill in the space is to look closer at details of the design. So you can look closer at how it works. If you've said there's a socket that sits in the frame, draw for me how the socket fits in the frame. Talk about what material the frame's made of. How is the frame constructed? Has it got little spot welds in between the metal pieces? How's the fabric wrapped around? What sort of fabric is it? Why is that fabric good? How's the fabric glued on? So you're going just into a lot more detail. If you've said you've used stainless steel, talk about the pros and cons of stainless steel. Why are you using it? How does it go with your era? How does it meet your brief? Does it add to the durability of things? The strength of set things? Yeah, so improvements, details. And all throughout it, make notes about how it shows your era or movement. Does it have the curves from your era or movement? Does it somehow tell the story from your era or movement? Is it talking about how for example, your movement or era stands for optimism and brightness and warmth and light. You might choose to use like a bulb with a warm, gentle glow rather than a harsh white glow. And you can sort of say that that's telling the story of warmth and optimism. Yeah, so it doesn't always have to be, oh, the era used curves, I'm going to use curves. Maybe you could look at the deeper sort of story and how you could show that. And always link it back to your brief. Are you meeting your brief? So, improvements, details, era and movement, brief. Right. To get you started, it might be hard to sort of know what to look at. So you can look at shape, colour, texture, pattern, form, style, that sort of thing. That's just some ideas, so many more. So is the shape of it good? You could ask yourself, and you could do some positives and negatives about the shape and then change things based on that. Is the colour good? If you've used bright red or bright blue and you're trying to show warmth because your era was about warmth and optimism, maybe you could say, I don't think the colour reflects warmth and optimism, so I'm going to change it to yellow or gold, which does. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Texture and pattern. Texture and pattern are used in lots of different movements or eras, so have you shown that in your lamp? Also with texture, if your lamp's to be moved around quite a lot, is it comfortable to hold? Does it have a comfortable texture? That could be something you change. So function, how it works. Durability, do you think it will last a long time? If you've made of tissue paper, maybe not. You could look at a different material. Strength, is it strong? If it's made for a kid's room, Will it be able to be knocked over and be okay? If no, that could be something that you change. Safety, is it safe to use? Once again, if it's in a kid's room or with elderly people, is it safe and clear for them to use? Assembly, how's it put together? Screws, glues, welding, that sort of thing. Materials, what's it made of? Sustainability, wiring, light bulbs, all that sort of thing I've talked about before. Right, you might need to do some research throughout this stage. You might want to look at library books, you might want to talk to an electrician, you might want to do user surveys. So if you're making a lamp for a kid, talk to a kid about, like, if you've got a younger brother or sister, talk to them about what they think about the lamp, whether they'd be able to tell how to use it. And you could make changes based on that. If they say the switch isn't clear, how to use, change the switch. Ask them what would be good. That's research. Take apart a lamp. Maybe take photos of a lamp you've taken apart and work out how it works. Make a small model of your lamp, or a full-size model, maybe just of paper, Play-Doh. It doesn't have to work. There's so many things. If you click on this link, it'll take you to lots of ideas about research. Oh, so I'll click on that. And it just gets you started. So maybe you want to research how the wire works. Maybe you want to research which sort of bulb, so halogen, CFL, LED, incandescent, they all have different costs. So that could be something if you're making a lamp for people on a low income. Think about what sort of bulb it needs and how much that would cost per year. If you're thinking about light bulb fittings, do you think it would be easier to screw one in or like push and pop one in? So this is all things to think about. Joining methods, so adhesives, how do you stick stuff together? There's links there as well. Welding, what sort of welding are you going to do? What sort of screws might you use? Because most people have, hopefully, one like a flathead or a Phillips head screwdriver to use, but not everyone might have this sort of screwdriver or an Allen key. So think about what sort of screws you want to put in based on what you think people would have. There's all these other things, nuts and bolts, rivets that are more permanent, threads. Are you going to screw things together using threads? Taking it apart, do you have a little lampshade fitting that the fabric wraps around? How's that put together? What's it made of? Here's a socket. Function and assembly, what are the parts of a lamp? Materials, here's some basic information about materials. Here's some really good links. So the orange ones are like quite good links. These are just some diagrams about strength and density. So density is like, if I had a brick made of marshmallow, the brick made of brick would be a lot heavier because it's dense. There's a lot more material in the same amount of space. So if I was wanting something really strong and not very dense, I go up that way and then sort of back that way. So woods, there we go. It's reasonably strong, not too dense. If I want something really strong, it'll probably be dense, like metals and ceramics and that sort of thing. So that's what those graphs are about. And strength and cost. If you want something really strong, it often costs a bit more. Yeah. Anthropometrics, that's a measure of people. So if you've got a lamp that's going to go over someone's shoulder so they can read, how tall are they when they sit up? What sort of size is the couch? So that helps you work out how tall the lamp needs to be. The measure of man, that's really good. It has average sizes of people. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to this one. So this is this one here. I'm just going to go to the next slide and have a chat to you about incorporating prototyping and research into your page. So the example I'm going to keep coming back to is this little modular greenhouse. Yeah, it's got little pegs to go into the ground. It's got these 4 rails here, and then these panels slide in, and it's got a lid that flips over. Cool. So prototyping is making a model. So you might want to make a model of your lamp during your development. Maybe you ask yourself the question, is it going to be a good size? And you might make it to scale out of paper, and you might sit it on your bedside table, take a photo of it, and write down what you learnt. So you could say, yeah, I learnt that the shade is actually really huge, so I'm going to make the shade smaller. And that's what you can change. So make a model. What did you learn? What can you change? So for example, here I made a little model of that base peg bit. And I wanted to, what was my key focus? I wanted to see if it was a good size for the garden. Yeah. And I printed it out of 3D printing stuff, PLA plastic. And I wrote what I learned from it and my next step. So what am I going to change? So you can do this sort of thing on like a little bit of your development page. You can ask yourself a question and then you can go do a model. You can take photos of it, write what you learn, and then make the changes. So here, I wanted to see if this peg would fit in the garden well. I learned that it did, but didn't like butt up against the edge of the garden. So I said I want to remove 2 of those sort of curves so that it can go to the edge of the garden. So I wrote the focus of my prototype. I got a photo of it. I wrote what I learnt, and then I made the changes. Yeah, you can do that. You don't need to do it on a whole page. You can do it in one little corner of the page. It doesn't have to be huge. Another thing you can do is use a survey. So you can write out a survey, ask people the questions, write what you learnt from the survey, make changes to your design based on it. So, like I said, if you're making a lamp for a kid's room, ask your little brother or sister or something what they think of the lamp. If you can write down what questions you ask them, you can write down the responses, and then you could write down some things you learned from it and what you're going to change. So that's what I did here. It just takes up a little bit of the page. I wanted to ask people whether my little greenhouse was easy to put together. So I got people to put it together, and then I sort of observed what they struggled with, and I also asked them questions about what they struggled with. And I made changes based on that information. And I put it all on the page. It's been a bit cut off, but I put on their answers and I put on what I was going to change and that sort of thing. Online research. This is a very easy one. Just Google something. If you've got a question, how does a water filter work? That's more for drink bottles, but you might be like, how does a halogen bulb work versus an LED bulb, and what are the pros and cons? Google that. Write a little paragraph about what you learned. Include some sort of like screenshots of the bulbs or the information and where you got it from. Based on that, can you change something in your design? Or if you're not changing it, just talk about what you're detailing more. Yeah, so I did some research on aluminium extrusion, which is that, and I sort of talked about what would be good, what would be bad, how it meets my brief, and that sort of thing. Dismantling. So that means to take apart. So you might cut it up, look at it, take photos of it. Include those photos of the lamp all apart in your development and sort of talk about what you learnt from it. Label the pieces. How is that relevant to what you're doing? So what did you learn? What can you change? Or can you add more detail to your lamp based on what you learnt by taking it apart? Hope that makes sense. So we had prototyping, which is making a model. Use a survey, which is like asking people questions. Online research, just Google the question. Dismantling, take it apart. And then here's some resources. So step-by-step guides on prototyping, and it gives you a template too. Step-by-step for surveying and a template. Step-by-step for dismantling and a template. I haven't done one for research because I feel like that's pretty straightforward. But you can like print these out and like stick that on your development page or something, and what you learned and what you've changed based on what you did. I hope that all makes sense and is helpful. To find those instructions, you click there. To find those research starting points, you can either click there or there. So that's all for now.